Hello YouTube and welcome back to Dare to Game. Today we're going to be playing Mount & Blade Bannerlord and we're going to be going through the control attribute skills like I did in my previous one for Vigor. So we'll go through each skill. I'll show you either which perk is the best one to choose just based on objective, which one is better than the other ones, or if it's more of a subjective thing, I'll explain why I went with one and why I sometimes would go with the other, and so in that way hopefully help you choose which ones you should go with. These guides have been requested by a lot of people who aren't sure which ones are going to be more beneficial, long run or short run, so I'm going through them one at a time. So if you're here for control, then sit on in and we'll get to it. So the control attribute says it represents the ability to use strength without sacrificing precision, so there's going to be an accuracy one. It's necessary for using ranged weapons. The skills that are bound to control are bow, crossbow, and throwing. So it says increasing control makes it easier to learn bound skills and also raises their learning limit. So the first one we go through here is bow. And again, this is just going to increase bow related stuff. I hope that's something that doesn't need to be explained. So the first option for bow is not going to be one that you have a choice. So it's just Marksman, which increases your accuracy with bows by 10%. Good skill. Then we have faster aim, which increases readying speed by 10%, and the alternative is strong pull, which allows you to hold aim for 15% longer. Now the reason I go with faster aim is because it's just almost always going to be the case that it's better to be able to knock your next arrow quicker than to hold the first one. Speaking just from real life archery standpoint, it's almost never a good idea to sit there and hold your bow drawn. So I always apply that in game. Plus, as I said, in the game, it is almost always better to just be able to fire faster than to hold it longer. So the next option is Forest Hunter. And so that one gives you 0.5 food in forests. And then the other option is Marsh Hunter, which gives you 0.5 food in marshes. So the reason I went with Forest Hunter is because there's more forests on the map than marshes. It's just going to be more often than not, it's going to give you that food boost. Now, obviously, if you're spending a lot of time in marshes, this one would be good. But there's a higher percentage of forests on the map, so therefore there's a higher percentage chance that you're going to be in one, and therefore this skill is going to be more useful more often. So then the next two options are Mounted Archer and Large Quiver. So Large Quiver is definitely a good perk that I really, really like. It gives you +3 extra arrows. But Mounted Archer allows you to use any bow on horseback. So this one is one of the harder choices, but the reason I figured this one is because some of the best bows, like I believe the Noble Longbow is one of the best bows in the game, you can't use it on horseback. But if you have this skill and the accompanying one for riding, which we'll get to when we're doing that video, you can use any bow. So you can use that, whereas this one just gives you an extra 3 arrows. So then the next option is Intimidate Infantry or Intimidate Archers. Now this one is one that again is going to come up to play style and sometimes even the faction you're playing with, because it really depends who your enemies are going to be. But I find that being able to intimidate archers keeps them off and can get them to rout a little bit more. And just generally speaking in Mount & Blade, archers are going to be some of the more devastating troops. Now if you have a strong infantry line assaulting all archers, the infantry are usually going to take the archers out. But only if the archers don't have an elevated position where they're able to fire on the infantry for a long way off and wear them down as they climb. So being able to scare archers away is definitely a good perk. Not to mention it really doubles in sieges. It works really well there. So then we have two more where you don't have an option. So you have Merry Men, which gives you +3 to your party size. Good skill. And Instructor, which says an archer in your party with a lower bow skill gets bow XP while waiting. So that one's just going to be, as you're waiting somewhere, anyone in your party with lower bow skill is going to just constantly get XP in it. So that's a good skill. Then we have Instinctive Shot or Battle Equipped. So Battle Equipped gives you 6 extra arrows per quiver. So again, that one's definitely a good perk. And Instinctive Shot says bow aiming accuracy increases to max 10% faster. Now with this one, I go back and forth on which one I think is more useful. Obviously having 6 extra arrows per quiver, so that means if you have 2 quivers or even 3, so if you go for a pure archer and you just have a bow and 3 quivers, you're going to get 6 per, so it's going to be 18 in the end extra arrows, which can really add up. This one, however, gives you your aiming accuracy increases to a max 10% faster. So when you pull your bow in the game, that little reticle will shrink, so the smaller that gets, the more accurate your shot's going to be. So if you pull it at the right second, you're going to be hitting right on the dot where you shot. So this just makes that happen faster. And I find that very useful, so I like to go with Instinctive Shot. Pick Targets or Howling Bolt. So arrow flight speed is +3% and damage +7%. And then Pick Targets says nearby troops get 10% accuracy. The reason I went with Pick Targets is if you're leading a band of archers, which, I do in this game when I'm role-playing as an archer. This one can make your troops so good. You set up an archer formation and stand right next to them, and like you're leading them on a hillside or whatever, and this is going to give them all a 10% accuracy boost, which definitely stacks a lot more than your individual arrow flight speed and damage being boosted. So this is definitely more of a commander trait, but I definitely really like that. So then the next two options, again, you don't really have a choice. You have ranger, so the player is better at firing arrows while moving. It just increases your accuracy and reduces the reticle size when you're firing. And then you have archery renown, which says ranged units are 30% cheaper to recruit. So definitely a lot of good skills to be gained through leveling up the bow tree. So let's go to crossbow. So for crossbow, this one, as you may be able to tell, and you've probably been able to tell if you played the game, not a lot of choices. In fact, none. So let's just quick go through them. Fast reload gives crossbows 10% faster reload, so that's good. Hasty reload gives you another 15% faster to reload them, which is definitely useful because crossbows are slow as hell, which is why I don't really use them. Crossbow cavalry, so this one says you can reload any crossbow on horseback, so that's useful if you want to use a crossbow for some reason, and also be on a horse. Plain hunter gives you plus 0.5 food in grassland, which is useful because a good deal of the map is grassland. Improved aim, accuracy increases to max 10% faster, so that's going to be like that one we were talking about in bow, so that your reticle is going to shrink that much faster. Maintenance, crossbow does 7% more damage. I don't know how that's maintenance. You'd think it would... I don't know. That's a bad name for it. Then we have recruiter. Crossbow troops are 20% cheaper to recruit. Can be useful if you like using crossbow units. Personally, I'm not wild on crossbows. Renowned Marksman, so ranged troops gain 5% more XP after a battle. Volley Commander, ranged troops reload speed increased by 10%. That can be useful, especially again, because like I said, crossbows reload slow. So if you go with a strong crossbow army and you've got that one, it's just going to speed up their firing rate, which is definitely going to help them in combat a lot. Without Honor, increases damage by 20% when hitting enemies in the back. So if you're a cowardly person, which most people who use crossbows are, that one will come in handy because you're going to be shooting people in the back a lot. So it's going to increase your damage by 20%. And then last we have bone bolts. So every time an enemy is killed by one of your bolts, it reduces the enemy's morale by 1. So that can really drain an army of morale fast. So, if you pick your shots wisely, you could bring them down by, 20 to 40% depending how many bolts you have with you. So definitely some useful perks in there, but again, like I said, no choices in the crossbow skill tree. All just one up over the next. So let's move on to throwing. So for throwing, we have the same dilemma as crossbow. It's just a simple straight line, so we're just going to burn through them and talk about them. So Steady Hand gives you a 15% increased accuracy with throwing weapons, just makes them more accurate. Skull Crusher, 20% increased damage on headshots delivered with throwing weapons. Nothing's quite as satisfying as throwing a javelin into someone's head in this game, and that one just increases the damage. I mean, to be fair, not terribly useful, because if you throw a spear into someone's face, they die. Fully Armored, 1 extra throwing weapon per pack. Can come in handy. Again, that's just going to give you a boost, so you take 1 more spear or throwing axe or knife or whatever you take into battle per stack that you have in your inventory. Not in your inventory, but equipped on your person. Skirmishers gives you plus 5 to party size. That's just going to increase the amount of people you can have in your party. Concealed Carry, use any thrown weapon while entering settlements as a civilian. That one's useful because, as a civilian, sometimes you get in a situation where you need to fight and you don't have good armor or weapons, so it's pretty useful to have some throwing axes or something like that with you. Makes it a little easier to fight without having to get right up to people where they can club you to death. Then we have Battle Ready, so that gives you 2 extra thrown weapons per back. Again, very useful, going to give you some extra spears. Master Thrower increases your weapon flight speed by 10% and damage by 20%. This is definitely useful because the only bad thing about throwing weapons is that they're kind of slow, so they're pretty easy to dodge. So if you can increase that flight speed, it's pretty useful. And, nobody would shake their heads and say no to a 20% damage boost. Then we have Perfect Accuracy, which increases thrown weapon accuracy. Doesn't say how much, but, more accuracy is better. Well Prepared, your troops have plus 1 throwing weapons ammunition, so this is going to be a boost to all of your troops, so definitely a good skill there. Going to give all of them an extra throwing weapon, so if you go with Sturgeon, if you're like Sturgian and you're going with the veteran infantry, they come in with throwing weapons to start with. That's a good boost for them because they're all going to be able to take out 1 more person. Then you have Mounted Thrower, which reduces horseback penalty, which is definitely good if you like doing like I do and running in and spearing your enemies before you ever start, hacking and slashing. And then we have ruining throw. So it says no penalty to throwing while moving. So it takes out, with any ranged weapons in Mount and Blade Bannerlord, you have the very wide reticle if you're moving while you're trying to throw. When you've got running throw, I think I said ruining at first, yeah, running throw, as you're running along, it does nothing. You can see like it's almost perfectly small, the little reticle where you're going to throw, so it's going to increase your accuracy a lot and make it way easier to use throwing weapons effectively. So that was pretty short, obviously, because crossbow and throwing are, you know, not very heavy on the choosing, but I think that definitely people like that. I think as much as it's great, in my opinion, to have choices between it, I think there's enough people out there that really like just a upgrade system that you get better over time, and it really doesn't take a whole lot of thinking. But I hope this guide helped you with the bow section of it and helped you explain and understand the other ones and why you want to go for them a little bit better. But that's all for today, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you like this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.